Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I got a pretty fun video today, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building another Arcade1Up Legacy Cabinet. This time I'm going to be making it an Irem Legacy Cabinet. And I know, okay,
it's yours, okay?
we haven't had any Irem cabinets from Arcade1Up, or I don't think we've even had any Irem games on any cabinets from Arcade1Up. So I don't know if there's any partnership between Arcade1Up and Irem, or if they're in the talks of doing it, or where they are at in that conversation. Maybe we will never get any of these games on an Arcade1Up cabinet, but just for fun's sake, I thought I would make a video, give you 12 games that could be on a Legacy cabinet. And regardless, I know you're going to say, well, we haven't had any of these games on cabinets, so why would we have a Legacy cabinet when we haven't even have an Irem cabinet, period? So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3, 4, or 5 games, whatever you'd like to see, and you're going to build your own cabinet. So you're going to tell me down in the comments below what games you'd like to see on a cabinet. You could take, like I said, 3 or 4 games. Let's max it at 4 games. So 3 or 4 games, what you'd put on a cabinet. Put that in the comments down below. Tell me what cabinet or what theme the cabinet would be. So pick a game that would be the theme of the cabinet, and then what games you'd put on that cabinet. So I'm going to give you the 12 games. Build your own cabinet. Let me know what you got. You can also let me know if there's any other Irem games that I left out, and let's take it from there. So let's go ahead and get started with the 12 games that you got to work with. So we'll start things off with Ninja Baseball Batman. And this is the game on the list that you either have no idea what it is, or you have been dying to see it on a cabinet. The game is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and your goal is to recover the 6 items that were stolen from the Baseball Hall of Fame. You'll play through 6 stages, and at the end of each of the stage, you will recover one of the items. You select between 4 different heroes, which names were based off of Major League stars of the early 90s. The game was popular in Japan, but sold only between 40 to 50 arcade units in the US. The character, enemy, and overall art style has an anime appearance to it, which in the early 90s was not yet popular in the US. This is a game that has become extremely popular on MAME, and its fanbase has grown over the years. The game concept was created by Drew Maniscalco, who was the national sales manager for Irem America at the time. He then licensed it to Irem. I mention this because this is the game on the list that I am most unsure if there would be an issue getting everyone to sign up for or not. From what I understand, Irem Japan owns the rights to the game content, but Drew owns the name and branding. The game has never been re-released or ported, but Drew seems like he really loves the game, and I'm sure under the right circumstances, he would like to bring it new life to Ninja Baseball Batman. Moving on to the original R-Type, which was released in 1987. The game is a horizontal scrolling spaceship shooter where you control the R9 Arrowhead. What made R-Type different at the time was the orb that you could collect on the front of your ship. It would help protect you from enemies as well as boost your ship's existing firepower. You could also shoot this orb out at enemies to kill them as well. In the game, you are attempting to destroy a powerful alien race known as the Baidu. The game earned itself several sequels, some of which you'll see on this list. I'm sure many fans would like to see a dedicated R-Type cabinet containing R-Type and all its sequels and spin-offs. R-Type was ported to the original PlayStation on a compilation disc by the name of R-Types. It was also ported to the R-Type Dimensions compilation, which can be found digitally and in some cases physically on modern consoles. Next up we have In the Hunt, and this is another horizontal scrolling shooter. Just imagine this as an underwater Metal Slug, where you control a submarine instead of a soldier. And I say this because the game was designed by the people who went on to create and found the Nazca Corporation, which is the company that created the Metal Slug series. Many consider it In the Hunt a cross between R-Type and Metal Slug. In the game you control a submarine known as the Granvia, and you'll make your way through multiple stages. And at the end of each stage, you will face a boss at the end. You will be in control of the scrolling as the screen does not scroll automatically like in most shooters. You will dodge enemy projectiles while firing missiles of your own either straight forward or directly above you. Like most shoot-'em-ups, you will collect power-ups along the way, which will enhance your submarine's firepower. This is a really fun shooter to play, and it's received ports on the Sega Saturn and original PlayStation. It's also available digitally on the Nintendo eShop and PS4 through the Arcade Archives series. Our next game on the list is GunForce, which is a run-and-gun action game. GunForce is basically a Contra clone, but not as good. You run through the stages and will have enemies and projectiles coming at you from every which angle. You can fix your firing at a specific angle or location as you run through each stage. Probably the coolest part is that you can jump into enemy vehicles along the way and use them to mow down enemies. This includes jeeps or helicopters and all kinds of different things. The game is pretty fun, but not as good as its sequel. Also, it did receive a port in 1992 to the Super Nintendo. The port was not done by Irem, but instead by Bits Studios, and it's not the best port in the world, so proceed with caution. Dragon Breed was another fun and unique side-scrolling shooter released by Irem. In Dragon Breed, you play as King Chaos, who scrolls through 6 stages riding a dragon named Bahamut. The unique gameplay feature that separates Dragon Breed from other shooters is that you can maneuver Bahamut's body around to block projectiles. As far as weapons go, King Chaos wields what appears to be some sort of crossbow, and then Bahamut can also shoot fireballs. The fireballs that Bahamut shoots can be charged up to multiple levels, and obviously the longer you hold down the charge button, then the more powerful his fireballs will become until you reach the maximum power. There are also several colored orbs that you can acquire along the way that will grant Bahamut different abilities. Dragon Breed is a very fun and unique shooter. The only ports that I got were to systems like the Amiga and Commodore 64. Adding a little variety to the list, we have Hammerin Harry. This is an action platformer where you wield a large hammer as your main weapon. You'll learn that your hammer can be used in a variety of ways. You can destroy both enemies and objects with the hammer. It can also be used as a shield to block projectiles, and also used to slam the ground and stun enemies. As you navigate through the stages, you will find power-ups for your hammer to make it larger and more powerful. This is actually a really fun arcade platformer. The original arcade release received ports to the Famicom and Game Boy. There were also sequels made in an anime series based around the character. Most, if not all, of the future console releases or ports were released outside of North America. On to our first sequel, we have R-Type 2. And this came to arcades 2 years after the original. In this game, you will have a new and upgraded ship named the R9C. This upgraded ship will now have 5 weapon types, including the newly added search laser and shotgun laser. The ship's wave cannon was also improved. Being that you have a more powerful ship, the enemies are also more difficult to deal with as they fire more projectiles, require more damage to destroy, and come in greater numbers. R-Type 2 has fewer stages than the first game, with only 6. The game is considered to be much more difficult with the more challenging enemies and terrain of the stages. Super R-Type on the Super Nintendo is somewhat a port of R-Type 2, but there were some changes made, so it's not a direct port. It was part of the R-Type's port and R-Type Dimension port that I mentioned from the original R-Type. Our second beat 'em up on this list is going to be Undercover Cops. This came out a year before Ninja Baseball Batman, and was Irem's first attempt at the modern beat 'em up genre. In the game, you play as the City Sweepers, who are an agency that works to take down the street thugs. The game is based in New York City during the year of 2043. The game in arcades supported up to 3 players co-op gameplay. The 3 selectable players are Claude, who is a Japanese former karate master, Bubba, who is an ex-American football player, and Flame, who is a female vigilante, whose boyfriend was killed by the thugs. The Japanese version of the game has different names for all these characters. The gameplay was inspired by Final Fight, but with more detailed backgrounds and a bit more gory overall gameplay and settings. The game did receive a port to the Super Famicom, but it's extremely pricey. There was an English translated collector's edition published by Retrobit recently that was sold by Limited Run Games and a few other online stores. If you follow the channel, then you probably remember me mentioning this for several weeks in a row. Irem switched it up a bit in 1992 when they released Mystic Riders. This is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up where you play as 2 broom-riding magicians. Where most of the other shooters from Irem have a much darker theme, Mystic Riders falls more into the cute-'em-up genre, meaning it has brighter colors and cuter enemies compared to most other shooters. Cute-'em-ups aren't necessarily easier, but Mystic Riders would be considered a bit more casual of a shooter. The gameplay is really fun in this one, as not only can you shoot projectiles, but you can also use your broom for melee attacks as well as throw your broom in multiple directions to take out enemies. Fans of the Cotton series should enjoy Mystic Riders, as it plays similar to an easy version of Cotton. I don't believe that Mystic Riders ever received a console port, however it is included on the Super Retrocade made by Retrobit. Moving on to GunForce II, which was a direct sequel to the original GunForce arcade game. And if the original GunForce was a Contra clone, then GunForce II would be considered a Metal Slug clone. This was one of the last, if not the last, arcade game that came from Irem before some of the employees left Irem to form the Nazca Corporation, thus leading to the start of the Metal Slug franchise. This is why graphically and gameplay-wise, the two are very similar, meaning that GunForce II is a run-and-gun style game, where you can take control of vehicles along the way to blast your way to the end of the stage. The game itself is made up of 5 stages, and along the way you will rescue women POWs instead of the bearded dudes in Metal Slug. It's a step up and a much better arcade game compared to the original, and definitely worth checking out. Unfortunately, it never did receive a console port to date. Next up, we have Ninja Spirit, and this was a late 80s action platformer that will vaguely remind you of the Ninja Gaiden series. In the game, you will traverse through 7 stages, armed primarily with a katana, but you have a multitude of other weapons that you can toggle between, including shurikens, bombs, and the Righteous Cloud, which you can sling in all sorts of different directions. You also acquire an array of power-ups along your journey to make the experience even more enjoyable. Ninja Spirit did receive a few ports, but most notably to the TurboGrafx 16. It is also available as part of the Arcade Archives series and can be purchased on the Nintendo eShop and PlayStation Store. Now for our final game on the list, we have Cosmic Cop, or known in Japan as Armed Police Unit Gallop. This is a spin-off of the R-Type series, and similar to R-Type, this is a side-scrolling shooter. You pilot the R-11B Peacemaker, which is equipped with a lock-on laser and 2 forward-firing guns. You'll acquire weapon power-ups and missiles along your way through the 5 different zones. Cosmic Cop differs from most horizontal shooters, as you can control the scrolling speed by moving further to the right of the screen. While being part of the R-Type series, it does feel and play much more different. I'm sure most of you would prefer to see this on an R-Type only cabinet, which could also include some of the other spin-offs that I did not mention here. Cosmic Cop never received a console port that I could find, so even more the reason to see it on an Arcade1Up cabinet. Well, that's the 12 games that I've listed. Like I said, you can go ahead and give me if there's any that I left off as far as IREM games that you'd like to see on Legacy or just any kind of IREM cabinet. Make sure you put down in the comments and let me know. And then let me see if you can pick 3 or 4 of these and then build your own cabinet. And then tell me what theme you would pick. Would you go with an R-Type theme cabinet? Or would you go with a Ninja Baseball Batman cabinet and put some beat-em-ups on there like Undercover Cop and Hammerin Harry? Regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.